Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about more red flags to look for when you're buying a home and what kind of things are out there working against you in terms of fraud, things like that. So here we go. Okay, so in today's video, welcome back to the channel and welcome if you're new here, but I've talked about this in the past about some red flags to look for when dealing with certain lenders. People doing shady stuff, what is shady, so that you know what to recognize, and things like that. So I talked about that in my previous video, but in this video we're going to talk about what can happen during the process, things to look out for, because there are some serious issues in the lending world, in the finance world right now, that have only been getting worse probably for like the last 5 years or so. They've become very prevalent. One of those things we're going to talk about is wire fraud. Now, it seems like it would be very difficult for someone to be duped into sending money to the wrong bank, but it actually is very common, and it's a really big problem right now in the industry. So what happens is someone is buying a home or refinancing. It's usually during a purchase because there's a lot more people involved that are unknown. Sometimes, you know, the buyer's agent didn't pick the listing side of things like escrow and title. So there's some unfamiliarity during that process on the buying side. And what has happened is people have found a way to find out who is in the middle of a transaction, who the escrow company is or the title company is, and then what they'll do is they'll actually send wire instructions to the buyer saying, here's the information on where you are to send your money. You know, either your earnest money deposit or the money that you're going to close escrow with. So this is thousands and thousands of dollars. And what they'll do is they'll make their email look as close as they can look like an email that came from the escrow company. And it's very devious. It's very tricky, and it has tricked a lot of people. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I was working on a different team in a different company. And one of our clients was actually sent one of these emails. We were in the middle of a transaction. They get an email, and it's a cloned email. It looks almost exactly like an email from this escrow company with wire instructions. And this was towards the end of the transaction. So whoever was doing this was very savvy. They had an idea of who they were, what they were doing, and when things were happening. And they targeted them, and they sent them this email. The buyers that we were working with thought this was an email from escrow, and they took those instructions and they wired over $10,000 to this account. And the thing about wires is that when you wire funds to an account, there's pretty much no way to get that money back. I mean, it's gone. You wired it, it is gone. It went to these hackers, these thieves, wherever they are, but it went to them, and then they can just kind of disappear. And it was a terrible thing because these people were buying a house and they lost over $10,000 because they were duped into sending money to the wrong account. So now that you know that this is something that is out there, what do you do during the process? Like, what can you do to protect yourself? Well, one, anytime you get any kind of wire instructions, make sure they're coming to you through channels that you know. So your buyer's agent is usually going to have communication with the escrow company. You're going to know who that escrow company is. They're going to have a name that you're going to be able to find them online. You're going to have an escrow officer assigned to your transaction. They're usually going to send you some information on where you're supposed to send your earnest money deposit or well, that's usually what it's called, especially in California. If you're outside California and other states, they might call it like a good faith deposit or, well, I mean, there are some other names to it, but that's essentially what it is. It's the initial amount of money to basically secure your spot in the purchase of this home. So you're going to know who that person is. You're going to get information, and usually what they do now is they have these big warning signs on the bottom of their emails. These warnings will say, wire fraud is a real problem. Don't ever send money without confirming with your escrow officer the information. So if you get that information, usually they're not going to even have an account number on there because they want you to call the escrow company and confirm that information before you send any money. That's like one of the biggest things that has happened in the industry is that escrow companies have changed how they send wiring information. It's supposed to be very secure. It's supposed to be direct to you. It's not going to be coming from, someone else in the company. It's going to come from your officer. And they want you to call them to confirm the details. Okay, so that's something to be aware of. You're going to call that company, and the information that you have to contact this company and this person should be readily found online. If it's ABC Escrow and the escrow officer is such and such, you should be able to Google that information, find their website, and find their contact information just to make sure everything links up. Because the thing about these cloned emails, when you get one, even though it might look legitimate, usually the contact information, the email address will be slightly off. The phone number might be something that leads to the scammer. So if you call that number on the email that's already fraudulent, you might go to the scammer that tells you the information that they want to give you to, take your money. So you want to be able to double check these kind of things. When I bought my home, we were dealing in a state that doesn't deal with escrow companies, it deals with lawyers, so real estate lawyers. So the real estate lawyer and all that stuff, I made sure that I looked them up online. I found their direct contact information. I called them and got the information confirmed directly with them. That's just a part of doing your due diligence to look out for wire fraud, because it is such a big deal. Because once that money's gone, it's gone. And that could have been all the money you had saved. And you were counting every penny to buy that house, and now you can't buy that house, and that money's just gone. It's a tragedy. And it still happens today, and it happens more often than we would like it to. So that's why everyone in this industry is trying to crack down on that as much as they can and be aware of emails that are coming from outside sources that aren't a part of the transaction, because they'll look very similar. And sometimes they don't look similar at all, but they have the right verbiage up top that is supposed to catch your attention. On the lending side, I'll get emails from scammers and it'll say, closing disclosure is available now, or final closing statement is available, and then it'll have some random number. It'll say, and then in the body of the email, it'll be very blank. There won't be anybody's names. There won't be any addresses. It'll just say, click the link to access the closing statement or something like that. It'll be very general, but that's targeted to people in my profession. Because if I'm processing a loan and I'm working with all these different escrow companies, these scammers are hoping that I don't pay attention and I just click on this link, and then boom, now there's a security risk to my company and all the stuff that it's connected to. So it's a problem. It's a problem throughout the whole industry, but for you as a consumer especially, this is how you need to be aware of it for wire fraud. Now the second thing to be aware of, and this is how your information can actually get out there very quickly when you're buying a house. Now when we pull a credit report for you, we do it inside our loan origination software. There's a few big ones that are most common everywhere, but it's a software program. Now the thing is, when we pull it, usually your contact information is in the file when we pull your credit report. Now, normally that wouldn't be a bad thing, but the problem is these credit report companies have these deals set up that when we pull a credit report, if there's contact information available when it's pulled, that information goes backwards to the credit reporting company. And then what do? Well, they want to make money too. They sell your information as a lead. It's called a trigger lead. So if I pull your credit, on the credit report, it's going to show that a mortgage company, a finance company pulled your credit. That's a trigger lead. There are people out there who will buy that information from the credit bureaus. So however this is legitimate, this is what they do. And then they will call you and try to get you to do your financing with them. And some of them are shady, because they will call you and pretend to be me or pretend to be my company. Say, oh yeah, I know that person. I'm calling to follow up on their behalf. Go ahead and send me your documentation or whatever. And these are people are not doing business with, and you don't know anything about them. They just pop in to try to take your information and basically try to take the transaction. So they actually try to take the business and steal it away so that this is a whole different person entity, or they're just trying to get your information. So there's a couple ways that happens, but it's something to be aware of. If someone calls you after you've had your credit run by a lender, if someone calls you and it's not that person you spoke with, then you got to confirm some information. Who are you? Where are you calling from? Because they might say they're calling from the same company that pulled it. I don't know how they get that information, but sometimes they have that too. Or they'll just say, oh, I'm from blah, blah, and I'm calling to follow up. I know we just pulled your credit, blah, blah, blah. Make sure you know who you're talking to. These people are very quick and they're very smooth, and they can be very confusing, and they can get your information that way. So anyway, I don't want this video to run too long, but if you like this content, please share the information. This is good stuff for anybody out there, especially anyone who's even within a year or two of trying to buy a home. You want to know as much as you can about this kind of stuff, because it does happen, and it happens to everyday folk. They're not targeting rich people and big transactions necessarily. It's pretty much everywhere, any transaction. So be aware, know these things are out there. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm going to keep making content like this, and comment down below if you have any questions, anything that comes up with buying a house, refinancing, just anything you ever want to know about the process, anything I can help you with. I would love to help. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going. So, alright guys, thank you very much. And we'll catch you next time. Peace.